The 1920s were years of rapid growth, poverty, and social change. The American dream in the 1920s was freedom to choose and have options for your life. This included fitting in socially, having friends and family, and being successful.
The 1920s were all about opportunity. The opportunity to be whatever you want, be how successful you wanted, and have the lifestyle you choose. For many people, this included the introduction of the Jazz Age. With this new style of music came the new styles of clothing and culture.
The American dream in the 1920s was that anyone could be successful. It didn't matter where you came from, grew up rich or poor, everyone had a fair shot and equal opportunity to change their future.
All the growth, many people lived in poverty and had very hard lives. These people were the ones who couldn't adjust to the new lifestyle.
The photography of the 1920s captures every aspect of the American dream and the Roaring '20s lifestyle. In this first picture, people gather around the White House to listen to the newly popular jazz music on the radio after President Harding installed a radio in the White House. The new music culture was contagious to all Americans, even the president. In this photo, kids dance around at the egg roll for Easter in 1920. The American dream for kids during this time was to be carefree and loved. Many kids were able to live out this dream because their parents were also living the American dream. Women wave flags and blow horns in celebration of the passing of the 19th Amendment, women's suffrage. The amendment was ratified August 18, 1920, and marked a turning point for women in the American dream of equal opportunity. In this next picture, Charles Lindbergh stands with his plane, the Spirit of St. Louis. With this plane, he made the first flight across the Atlantic Ocean. He contributed to the American dream of new technologies and successes. Women pose in their new style swimsuits on the beach, enjoying their American dream, friends, and relaxation. During the 1920s, many people, like these ladies, were able to have much more leisure time because of the cultural change. In this picture, a man sits in his office organizing papers and enjoying his American dream, success in the workplace. With the new culture and economy, many men were able to get white-collar jobs and leave the hard labor of farming and factory jobs.
Filmography in the 1920s was the start of a new era. The first all-talking pictures were introduced in the mid-1920s. Before, there were only silent films. The Jazz Singer, released in 1927, directed by Alan Crosland, was credited with being the first talkie. Actresses like Joan Crawford and directors like Alfred Hitchcock were contributed greatly to the improvement of the film industry, helping to make it what it is today.
Mama, stop now. You're just kittenish. Mama, listen, I'm going to sing this like I will if I go on the stage, with this show. I'm going to sing it jazzy. Now get this. Blue sky, smiling at me, nothing but little blue sky. Do I see? Do. Bluebird, singing a song, nothing but little bluebird, all day long. Like that.
The 1920s gave birth to the jazz era, bringing in iconic stars like Louis Armstrong, Al Jolson, and Paul Whitman. These songs still have an impact on music today. Jazz not only changed the music industry, but also the culture and the way of life in the 1920s. From the way people dressed to the way people acted. People became less conservative and more racy with the way they dressed, talked, and danced. This also gave rise to rebellion by the younger generation, which was disapproved by the older generation.
Politics in the 1920s emphasized a return to normalcy and equal opportunity for Americans. First off, Amendment 18 dealt with prohibition, took effect in the 20s. It made alcohol illegal, and its intent was to make America pure and ideal. However, many people took this opportunity to make money through speakeasies, which were bars, and smuggling alcohol, and it was kind of a rags to riches mentality. And so that's one idea, but two different takes on the American dream. Next, Amendment 19 gave women the right to vote. It states, "The right of the citizens of the United States to vote shall not be denied or abridged by any state on account of sex." And this was a step forward for equal opportunities and not being limited by race or gender. Warren G. Harding was the first president elected in the 1920s. In his inaugural speech, he addressed a return to normalcy after the war and emphasized second chances for Americans and the ability to control their own destiny. Calvin Coolidge was the second president elected in the 1920s. In his inaugural speech, he addressed brotherhood of humanity, equal opportunities, and the prosperity of hard workers. These ideals led many Americans to wealth and success in the 1920s, and that about sums up the classic American dream.
Uneasy about alcohol. This is a headline for an article talking about the prohibition of alcohol that came into effect in 1920. This act prohibited the manufacture, distribution, and consumption of any types of alcohol in the United States. I think this could have slightly changed the American dream for some Americans. This could have altered the American dream because some Americans could have dreamed of having a glass of wine by the fireplace with their children on Christmas Day when they became of age. With the prohibition of alcohol, this could have drastically changed that dream for many American families. Stock market crash, 1929. On October 24, 1929, the United States stock market crashed due to instability after World War I. Many businesses went bankrupt, stocks dropped 66% and higher. 16 million shares were lost. The nation's unemployment rose to 17 million. The country went into a depression, which didn't end until the 1940s. I think this drastically changed how people thought of the American dream because at this point they were just simply trying to stay alive. I think they would have thought a lot about all the things that they took for granted in the early 1920s and wished for everything to go back to the way it was. Babe Ruth goes to the Yankees. In 1920, Babe Ruth was sold to the New York Yankees for $125,000. Yankee Stadium was later called the house that Ruth built. He reached his peak performance in 1927 when he hit his 60 home runs in a season, a record that still stands today. He retired in 1935. Babe Ruth will always be an inspiration to young baseball players around the world. He will always be seen as an American baseball king. Babe Ruth changed the American dream for many young boys in the 1920s because they all wanted to grow up and hit baseballs just as far as Big Babe.